Welcome into our second episode of what we are calling the Think Fast mini podcast. I believe is what Joe called it last week. Again, if you didn't catch last week, we're wanting to keep these very short. We're wanting to kind of hit these topics rapid fire, stuff that we want to react to rather quickly, rather than with our episode recording for the main podcast being backed up. We don't want to hit something 2 or 3 weeks after it's been relevant. And so that's the purpose of this Think Fast mini podcast. So we're back with our second episode. And I just got to say, before we get into the topic, I dressed up for this, and judging by the look of these guys, Jack, that has got to be the ugliest jacket I've ever seen in my life.
So, Jersey, show a little respect.
Right. Sorry.
This guy clearly has not watched hockey.
It's rough looking, whatever.
It's a classic, and for those that don't know, that jersey's a beauty. In all of the way, if you play hockey,
don't describe me as a beauty. No.
I said no. I said the jersey's a beauty. Oh no, okay. Nothing from the neck of that up would be beauty.
All right,
but no, it's a nice jersey with some history
Joe,
here, even though it is Canada.
We won't even get into what you're wearing, but anyway,
fellas, I'm ready for bed, man.
Let's go ahead and get to the topic for this episode. It's a question with the season that is upon us. No, I'm not talking about spring. We're talking about prom with this episode. It's prom season. You're starting to see the pictures. You're starting to see the photos posted by parents and young people of their prom date, their evening at prom, their night at prom. And I'm just going to say I work with young people. This is not going to be my most popular video by any means. These are not popular stances that we're going to take. But with the title of the main podcast that we have, Think Deeper, that's what we're here to do. We're here to think deeper about things that maybe culture just blindly accepts. And really what we're here to discuss today is, do Christian young people have any business going to prom? And before I kick it to the other two guys, I got to be honest. I don't see how anybody can get up and defend the fact that Christian young people should be going to prom. My stance is that a Christian young person has no business being there. They have no business going to prom. They have no business participating in the things that are there. And, a lot of people might jump up quick to say, well, hang on, I went to prom. What's the big deal with it? Where do you even start? With all the things that go on at prom, you start with the immodest dresses, the fact that there's, immodest dress going all over the place, which breeds lust. You've got the sensuality in general with the slow dancing and just the putting young people in sexually tempting situations. You've obviously got drinking at the after parties. You've got the fornication in many cases at the after parties. So many reasons why, or so many reasons that make us ask the question, why are we putting our young people in these positions? And so it's for all those reasons. Again, my stance, and I'm assuming what these guys, their stance is as well, Christian young people have no business being there. And yet we continue to post the pictures. We continue to see the pictures and like the pictures and comment on the pictures and say, oh, how great, how cute. Why? Guys, what do you have to add to that?
The frustrating thing for me, our parents tell the same stories. Prom has not changed. This idea of like, well, it's okay type of thing. It hasn't changed for, 20, 30, 40 years. Everybody, it's kind of this idea that like, it's the emperor's new clothes. Like, we all know it's extremely sensual, extremely sexually tempting. A lot of stuff goes on that should not go on with underage kids. We all know that this is the case, wink, wink, but we're just going to kind of overlook it because for whatever reason.
Because it's prom, right?
It's prom, right? It's prom. And Jack, I think I want to turn this over to you because you had made the point, the rite of passage. So I'm going to turn it over to you, but I think it's extremely sexually charged. And if anybody doubts that, like, I don't know how you could doubt it. Look at the pictures on Facebook and tell me, from the kids that you know, and tell me that there is not some sexuality going on there. And for the men listening, think about what it was like to be a 16, 17-year-old boy with your hormones raging. And if your girlfriend or a girl you decided to go to prom with came out in a dress that doesn't belong. Yes, very revealing. I guess I could get in some deep trouble with how I choose to say that. Very immodest dress. What's going through your mind? Your thoughts staying pure? Is that okay? And yet somehow it is okay for people. Jack?
So one of the things we like to do is kind of make the case for against. With our last video, we did the same. And as we kind of kicked it around and put our notes together for this, what's the case for it? And it's a memory, it's a rite of passage, it's a special moment in a young person's life. That's a pretty flimsy case. I can't think of much of a better reason than that. And I mean, you think about if our culture had a rite of passage, something that a lot of young people that went and did, like, all right, you're gonna walk through a Hooters, and then you're gonna go into a bar, and then you're gonna go into, like, and you're gonna do all these things, and this is the rite of passage, like. So to get this rite of passage, you have to walk through all manner of temptation, and then you make the case, well, you can come out of it without sinning. Like, maybe you can. I'm not saying that you can't, but where's our wisdom on this? Like, why are you going to put yourself in a situation where everything around you is a matter of temptation? Because we've brought up the immodesty, we brought up the dancing, we brought up after parties and getting away without supervision, alcohol, drugs, things like this come into the picture. Your kid, for this rite of passage, could very much make a decision that affects the rest of their life negatively. What? It's so low reward, high risk, and I just don't see the wisdom behind that.
Trusting the 16, 17, 18-year-old too is I think your illustration spot on. Let's walk through Hooters. Let's walk through a bar. What kid doesn't want to do that? Yes, that's painting with a broad brush. There are some kids, yes, they've been raised right, and they're trying to stay pure and whatnot. Why test it? Why tempt it?
Peer pressure as a part of it is part of the whole thing.
Right. And is this for the kid or for the parent? I guess is my question. Is this for the parent to be like, oh, it's the rite of passage? Are you really allowing your kid to make the decision? Of course they want to go to prom with with their significant other or whatever. Well, in a non-chaperone, yes, there are chaperones, but let's be honest. Are there really chaperones? Like, come on. Of course they're going to want that.
And again, I work with young people. And so how many young people are going to make the decision? Nope, I don't want to go to prom. Their friends are going to be there. They're going to be looked at as weird for missing out. You do hear that quite a bit. It only happens, once or twice in your life. You'll never get to go again. And so every Christian young person, or every young person, I should say, is going to want to go to prom. And so a lot of this, I got to be honest, I'm aiming it more at the parents. I teach a lot when young people and older people alike. What are you doing to avoid a path of temptation? We quote 1 Corinthians 10:13 all the time about God will make a way of escape. But what about when we throw ourselves down the path of temptation? When Satan swings a door wide open for us and we just plunge headlong into it? To me, that's what prom is. That's what a lot of Christian young people, a lot of Christian parents are sending their young people to, a wide open door for temptation. And again, if anybody is going to try to make the argument that the temptation, the sexual temptation, the drinking temptation, the lust, the immodesty, what's your argument here? Because you can't honestly say, well, that doesn't happen at prom. Of course it happens at prom. And so we have to ask ourselves, again, kind of like Jack said, what's the benefit? What are the pros and cons? Make a list. What are all the negative, after the consequences that could come about from this versus what are the pros? And again, one of the biggest negative consequences that I see, we are throwing the door wide open for temptation and telling our young people, hey, don't jump through it. Just go right up to the line, but don't cross the line.
And it goes the same thing with it as we see with pornography. Not my kid. I know that stuff happens. That's for the vagabonds, basically. Those are for the real troubled kids that kind of get into that stuff they're drinking. And my kid doesn't hang out with those. Don't delude yourself, okay? It is a tempting scenario. Your kid may be perfect. But you know how many people that I have spoken with and that I've worked with that, oh, my kid would never get into things like that. And I speak with the kid, and it's like, it's way worse than what the parents even thought they were. This happens all the time. So I'm not saying that every kid is untrustworthy. To your point, Will, why put them in a position where that's going to be tested? And I speak to the parent. No parent wants to be the one who keeps their kid home from this life-changing event of prom that is
not really life-changing.
Exactly. But no parent wants to be the bad guy, and so they leave it up to the kid. And of course, the kid's going to want to. The parent needs to step in and say, "Look, you're still under my rule. You're still under my house. This is not a very wise place to be." Now, I will turn this around and say,
I want to, before we finish,
okay.
The modesty part as well. If you're a parent of a daughter, my wife actually wrote a great article a few years ago called "Modesty is Not Situational." She made the point that Christians can hold to the strictest modesty standards, but on their wedding day, at the beach, at the prom, all of a sudden, like, it doesn't count anymore. Sure. Yeah, the gym. There's those places where all of a sudden those things that you wouldn't be caught dead in elsewhere, but now it's okay. And as we've talked about on Facebook, you get on in prom season, all these Christian girls who you see them on Sunday, they're dressed nicely, they're covered properly, and on prom, anything goes. And so that is another aspect of this is Christian parents buying that dress for their daughters. I mean, it just think about what that leads to.
So what I was going to ask, what are your guys' thoughts on alternative proms? Because this is in the homeschool movement and in Christian schools, they don't do prom, but they will do alternative proms,
Like a
which is
banquet type of thing.
yeah,
you're
banquet
saying,
type of thing. It's intended to be more Christian, and that the shenanigans don't take place. What are your guys' thoughts on that? Is that a wise move? Is that what we should encourage our kids to seek out?
I see both sides of it. Obviously, to me, if you can create an event, if you can create a dinner, a banquet, whatever, where enforce a strict dress code, whatever, but you eliminate the immodesty, you obviously eliminate any kind of alcohol, you eliminate after parties, so there's no temptation there. You eliminate the slow dancing, the sensuality, the sexual temptation there. I mean, I certainly don't have as big of a problem with something like that. Obviously, you get into, should 16, 15, 16, 17-year-olds even be in that situation in the first place? Probably not. But if it comes down to, hey, this group of 5 or 6 Christian young people they're kind of bummed out about missing the prom. Let's create something that they can, look forward to, have a nice dinner, maybe get dressed up once again, modestly, albeit I don't have a problem with that. If it's going to save them from a night of, once again, sexual temptation and possibly fornication, possibly drinking, possibly all kinds of things, I don't see as big of a problem with that. Again, you have to eliminate the issues, but I would not be against something like that.
I'm good with that take. I'll echo Will.
Joe, you got a take?
No, I think that's good. I would agree. So we would come down to our last question. We asked this at the last one. We might as well just jump right into this one. The hot question, the hot topic, the question that everybody asks: can you bind it? This is maybe we'll make this a recurring segment of every little hot take we have. Can you bind it? Fellas, can we bind this on people saying do not send your kids?
Clarify what you mean, Joe.
Are they sinning by is a parent sinning? Is a kid sinning by going to prom or by sending their kid to prom? Are they in wrong standing with God, and do they need to repent? I guess would be my version of binding it. Is it sinful?
I'll give my answer before I jump to Jack. I would say 98% of the time, maybe higher, maybe lower, a young Christian young person is going to sin at some point while at prom. The lust factor just by itself, I think, would, again, 98 to 99%, just the lust side of things. There's going to be sin at prom. When you talk about the actual going, getting dressed up, the nice dinner, can a Christian young person go to prom, have the nice dinner, whatever, and it not be a sin? Again, I think Jack said it earlier. You can, but how incredibly difficult is it? In fact, nearly impossible is the way that I would put it. So binding, it's tough to do. It's tough to say that, again, if you take the pictures, go to the dinner, get dressed up, that's a sin. It's the stuff that's associated with it. Abstain from every form of evil, 1 Thessalonians 5. And, again, that's where I draw the line. Again, Jack, I don't know if you have anything else to add. It's a tough question for sure, but to me, it's all the things that are associated with it that are the issue.
Can you tightrope walk between 2 skyscrapers? Yeah, you can. The guy, does it on TV every few years, right? You can. I don't think most of us should go trying it. And
Sure.
so you get to can you command people not to do it? Can you say it's a sin if you do it? No. On its face. However, putting so much of this comes down to wisdom and walking through the valley of the shadow of death, of temptation like that. Again, if you went and ate at a Hooters or one of those restaurants that's themed in that way, number one, being seen there, that might be a sin in itself of being a stumbling block to somebody else. So on that path, maybe it is. On the other, okay, I'm going to put myself in this place, and my whole time I'm going to have my guard up and really try not to sin. And really, why? You think about
terrible
that verse.
Idea, right?
Yeah, the verse Peter wrote about Lot. Righteous Lot. His soul was tormented day after day because of the unrighteousness around him. Don't surround yourself with unrighteousness. I mean, Psalm 1, the man who loves and meditates on the law of the Lord doesn't surround himself with those, the scoffers and the wicked.
Stand in the paths of sinners.
Right. And so with all those things in mind, the counsel would be, no, don't do this. There's no good reason to, and there's a lot of reasons not to.
I
I,
don't know that I'd have much to go for it.
I was going to say, to me, I think that's where you have to sum it up. What's the reason behind it? What's the benefit? If it comes down to, well, my kid's going to be upset if they don't get to go, it's what all their friends are doing. Those aren't good enough reasons. They're really not. They're not good enough reasons to offset all the temptation that they're going to deal with that night.
And can we just say this also goes? I'll wrap it up here. High school and college and all of these things, man, have a blast, have a ton of fun. That better not be the peak of your existence. This is a little soapbox, but don't let that be the peak of your life. Oh, the glory days, the good old days. If your kid misses prom, they did not miss out on life. They will, Lord willing, get married, have kids, have just a ton of great moments in life. Robbing them of going to a place where sin is very likely, temptation is extremely likely, and it really is a given. So as to have them experience part of the culture, I just don't see them missing out on that much in life. And for those who might be listening going, well, clearly these guys just, didn't get chicks to go to the prom. That's not the point. We're trying to make first off, that's not the case. I didn't go to prom. But that's to make the case that this has nothing to do with whether you have been, have not been. It's the wisdom behind it. You
And let's
may
think
have gone
deeper.
exactly. Right. We're thinking deeper. You may have gone as a parent, said it's fine. Just consider the wisdom. That's all we're asking to do. No, we're not binding this on you and telling you you are going to hell. That's not our place to do that. Consider the wisdom behind it. And I think all three of us, none of us see a whole lot of wisdom to this thing. And so with that, I think that's going to wrap our second episode of Think Fast. Unless you guys have anything else you want to add. And so we appreciate the listeners. We realize this might be a hot take. This might be something that can get people upset. Clearly, this is that time of year for it. By the time this is dropping, one of the reasons we wanted to cover that on this Think Fast. This is happening in the culture right now. You're seeing it on Facebook and such. Let us know in the comments. You may strongly disagree. Please be civil. We would love to get your thoughts on this as we go forward from here. We realize this is an engaging discussion and something that should be ongoing. But these are our thoughts, just trying to think deeper and stick to Bible.